Welcome. This is a presentation by occupational therapy students for a sleep module taught by Dr. Carrie Brown. The students involved in the creation of this project are Derek Robbins, Chelsea Robinson, Matthew Sheffer, and Brett Schmidt. We will be discussing ambient light and its effect on sleep. The objectives for today's PowerPoint are as follows. Understand what ambient light is, understand how we measure ambient light, understand the effects which ambient light has on our body, and finally, using a case study, we will discuss different ways in which we can manipulate ambient light in order to improve sleep. Ambient light is everywhere. It is the light that is present in any room and illuminates an entire room with a consistent level. Ambient lighting includes light from the sun, but can also include artificial lighting. So how do we measure ambient light? Ambient light is usually quantified using a unit of measurement known as lux. A lux is an SI unit of measurement which is equivalent to 1 lumen per meter squared. The lux level of a room can be measured using a light or a lux meter. There are several phone apps available to measure luminance that can be downloaded for free from the Google Play or Apple App Store. Now I would like to draw your attention to the chart on the right. This chart shows the approximate lux levels for different environments. Note the huge difference between sunlight and starlight. Additionally, notice how indoor light in an office or a classroom is significantly lower than the lux levels which you would experience outside on a sunny or even overcast day. Ambient light plays a major role in regulating our circadian rhythm. For humans, a typical circadian rhythm is a 24-hour period in which your body cycles through certain physiological processes and behaviors such as our body temperature and sleep-wake cycles. This cycling is regulated by the suprachiasmatic nucleus of the hypothalamus. The suprachiasmatic nucleus receives input from external environmental cues in order to ensure that your circadian rhythm is matching up with environmental demands. During the daytime, exposure to bright lights has been associated with subjective increases in alertness and vitality. Additionally, exposure to high levels of illuminance during the daytime is correlated with improved sleep quality. During the evening, being exposed to dimmed lights prior to bed and darkness during sleep has been reported to facilitate good sleep quality. However, several aspects of our culture, such as increased use of electronics and increased time spent indoors, causes many of us to be exposed to ambient light in ways which could be considered aberrant. One way in which people are exposed to aberrant ambient light is by not getting enough light throughout the day. Underexposure to daytime light can occur due to several reasons. For example, our older adult population tends to have a lower than average exposure to natural light. This could be due to mobility concerns or limited access to the outdoors when in a facility. People working indoors, such as students or office workers, are exposed to less light throughout the day in comparison to those who work in natural lighting, such as bus drivers. Office workers tend to receive significantly more morning light on work days than on the weekend. This is because they receive light when commuting to work, as opposed to staying in their homes early in the morning on days off. While sleeping in is enjoyable, to maintain a consistent sleep-wake cycle, it is important to wake up at the same time every day and get bright light exposure early in the morning, even on weekends. It is common for individuals to experience significantly lower levels of light exposure during the winter in comparison to the summer. Aberrant light exposure at night is a growing problem, particularly in Western society. Exposure to 30 to 50 lux of ambient light can disrupt sleep. Exposure to artificial light at night can increase alertness, decrease melatonin levels, and can disrupt the timing of the body's natural circadian rhythm. This has implications for many people who are exposed to high levels of ambient light before and during sleep. Night shift workers are exposed to light before bed on their way home from work. During sleep, they may be trying to sleep in a daytime environment. Healthcare facilities are often too bright in the evening and even during the night. People living in urban areas may be exposed to large amounts of ambient light from street lamps and lit signs. People exposing themselves to high levels of light before bed, such as watching TV before bed, brushing their teeth in bright bathrooms, and reading before bed with bright lights, may be suppressing melatonin production and ultimately disrupting their sleep. Night shift workers are especially vulnerable to sleep disruption. Their sleep-wake cycles are not in sync with the natural rhythms that are guided by the sun. It is common for night shift workers to be out in the sun just before going to bed, and they may be exposed to low levels of light during their waking hours. To maintain a social life, they may be likely to commit to events during the daytime hours when they should be sleeping. To end our presentation, we will be looking at a case study of a night shift worker and use the case to show interventions that an occupational therapist might use. Mr. Stiller will be the subject of our case study. He is a 38-year-old security guard who has recently transitioned to working night shifts. He reports that he feels very drowsy since switching to night shifts. He feels that he is constantly tossing and turning and is unable to sleep more than 6 hours at a time. Mr. Stiller needs to increase light exposure during his waking hours and decrease his light exposure before bed and while he is trying to sleep. To increase light exposure while at work, Mr. Stiller could make his working environment as bright as possible. He could turn on all the lights while walking through the museum. In his security office, he could use a blue light emitting lamp. Once Mr. Stiller gets off work, he will want to reduce his exposure to light in order to mimic the environment that a typical evening would present. He could wear sunglasses while outdoors and on the drive home. He could decrease the use of electronic devices before bed or use a blue light filtering application if he still wishes to use electronics at night. When Mr. Stiller is sleeping, he needs to try and block out as much light as possible. This includes using blackout shades, wearing a sleep mask, turning off or even unplugging electronics, avoiding the use of bright alarm clocks, and covering light coming from under the door. With these interventions, Mr. Stiller's exposure to light will attempt to mimic that which the sun provides naturally. Here are some resources for information on ambient light and sleep or other factors that affect sleep. Here's our reference list. This concludes our presentation. Thank you for listening.